Have you taken some time off recently from the bassoon? Maybe you've taken a few weeks off for a vacation, maybe you took a few months off, or maybe it's been many years since you've been playing bassoon. That's something that I see commonly on this channel, as I get lots of messages from people who say they're coming back to the bassoon after 20, 30, 40 years. So I thought I'd make a video on how to come back to the bassoon after a long time off, no matter if it's only been a few weeks or a few years. If we're just meeting for the first time, my name is Dr. Natalie Law, and I'm a professional bassoonist and bassoon teacher, and I love to help students just like you learn and get better at playing the bassoon. So if that's a topic that interests you, then I highly recommend that you subscribe to the channel and check out some of my other videos on how to get better at playing the bassoon. So luckily for you, no matter whether you've taken a few weeks off or quite a few years off of playing the bassoon, the process and the timeline are about the same to getting back into the bassoon. It's just if you've taken a lot longer off bassoon, it might take you a little while to relearn things and to remember things, but it's not going to take you years to get back into it. I have some experience with taking some time off of the bassoon myself. I've never taken years and years off the bassoon. I have taken around 6 months off of playing the bassoon, and during that time I was dealing with an injury, and so I couldn't play bassoon, and so I know what it's like to come back to this instrument after a long time off and sort of some of the things that you're dealing with. The first tip that I have for you, and I think it's probably the most important thing that I want you to know today, is to lower your expectations. So when you pick up the bassoon for the first time after taking some time off, you are not going to be able to play at the level or the same types of things that you did when you last played bassoon. Even if it's only been a few weeks, you lose muscle in your embouchure. Your fingers haven't been moving in those patterns in a few weeks, and so you've lost some of that ability to play, that physical ability to play. And so you cannot expect yourself to suddenly be able to play what you used to play. And if it's been even longer than a few weeks, if it's been quite a few years since you've played, you are not only going to have to sort of relearn and remember the physical aspects of playing bassoon, but a lot of the mental aspects of playing the bassoon. Remembering how to read certain notes, remembering how to connect what certain notes are on the page to what your fingers are doing, remembering certain techniques on the bassoon. It's going to be a mental experience to be able to get back into playing bassoon. And so my biggest tip for you right off the bat is just to lower your expectations. And you know, the nice thing about taking some time off of bassoon is that when you come back to it, it gives you a chance to sort of restart or reset. So I actually do recommend to a lot of my students to take some time off playing bassoon, because it can be nice to take some time away from the instrument, and then when you come back to it, you don't have all those frustrations and things that were hanging on to you the last time you were playing, and you can almost sort of think of yourself as a beginner again, but you're coming back to the bassoon with all this prior knowledge. And so it's like being a beginner again, but at a much more expedited pace. So there really is a silver lining to coming back to the bassoon. And I want you to think of it as a reset or a refresh or a beautiful opportunity to be a beginner again, but not in all the frustrating ways of being a complete beginner. So lower your expectations. If the sound that's coming out of the instrument isn't great at first, just be okay with that. Be okay with how it feels to come back to the bassoon, because it's not going to be what you expect it to be. The next piece of advice that I have for you is to start slow and build gradually. As you can't expect yourself to play what you were playing when you last left off from the bassoon, you can't expect yourself to play as much or as long, because you've lost that physical ability, you've lost that muscle ability to be able to play for long periods of time, and you're going to get fatigued really quickly. So I recommend, if you're coming back to the bassoon on the first day that you pick it up, I recommend that you only play for 10 or 15 minutes and then you put the bassoon away. Even if you feel like you could play longer, I still only recommend a few minutes, because if you push yourself too far too fast, you could get too fatigued in your muscles, and then by the next day you're so sore that you can't play again properly. So you don't want to play so much that you're sore and fatigued in your mouth. You'll feel a little bit of soreness coming back to it, but again, only 10 to 15 minutes or so, and then put it away. And I would say, if you have the time, if you're not trying to prepare for something, I would say stick to that 10 to 15 minutes a day for about a week. Every day for a week, take your bassoon out for 10 to 15 minutes and play some basic things, and just don't expect yourself to be able to play longer. Then the next week, build up that time. Maybe you're playing for more like 20, 30 minutes a day. And then the next week, build up that time even more. Maybe you're playing more like 45 minutes to an hour or something like that. So start really slowly, only play for a few minutes at a time, and then gradually build that up over the course of a couple weeks, because you need to allow your muscles to rebuild, and you need to allow your brain muscle to rebuild and relearn things on the bassoon. The next tip I have for you is that when you're first coming back to the bassoon, focus on your fundamentals. Like I said, it's kind of a beautiful opportunity to be able to come back as a refreshed person with not all the baggage of dealing with the issues on the bassoon freshly in your mind. So it's a good time to focus on your fundamentals of your playing, go back to the basics, remind yourself what are the good habits of playing on the bassoon. When I took a long time off the bassoon for my injury, when I came back to the bassoon, I basically rebuilt my embouchure because I had lost all of that muscle ability. And so I could not make the embouchure that I was making before. And I actually enjoyed that opportunity because my embouchure wasn't working well for me before. And I used that opportunity to rebuild and start fresh. So rebuilding your embouchure, reminding yourself of how the tongue is supposed to make contact with the reed, reminding yourself of how the fingerings work, reminding yourself of these very basic things of playing bassoon. So I would recommend that the types of things that you play are very fundamental exercises. You might check out my video on my bassoon warm-up, and that gets a little bit intense really quickly, but there are a couple points in there that I think are good coming back to the bassoon. So long tone exercises are probably the quickest and most efficient way to rebuild your embouchure because they force you to hold a pitch over a long period of time and to be able to control the reed. And they're a really good measurement of your ability of how much control you have. If you can control your long tones really well, then you have a lot of control on the instrument. If it's kind of wonky and you're not able to hold a steady pitch for a long period of time, you might have some trouble with that. So specifically the long tone exercises and maybe some of the scale exercises, depending on what level of player you are, I recommend you check out that video. And then that first 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of playing that you're doing in those first few weeks, just do those fundamental warm-up type exercises. Don't try to play any etudes. Don't try to play any repertoire. Don't try to pull out a band piece or something that you've played before. Really just focus on those fundamental warm-up type exercises. And the last tip I have for you coming back to the bassoon, especially if it's been a really long time off, maybe it's been a lot of years since you've played bassoon, my last tip for you is to get help. So if you can, try to get into a private lesson with a bassoon teacher, either myself or maybe someone local to your area, and have someone work with you, especially when you are learning these fundamental skills. It's nice to have someone sort of reteach them to you, and they will come much quicker to you because you've done them before. But to have someone sit with you and remind you how to do things and listen to you and provide immediate feedback, that's probably the best time to take a lesson. They can help you develop new good habits and avoid those bad habits that you might have held over from the last time you played bassoon. And just having a teacher in general, even if it's just a one-off lesson here or there, having a teacher listen to you can be a really eye-opening and sort of motivational experience, and having them play for you so that you hear in real time what you're trying to achieve on the bassoon. Having a lesson can be a really helpful experience for you. So again, if you can't get into a teacher locally, I provide Zoom lessons. I'll put a link down below if you want to sign up for one of those with me. I hope this video was helpful for you and gave you some tips and ideas to think about as you're returning to playing the bassoon. If it was helpful, I would love if you give me a thumbs up on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you're returning to the bassoon, you might find some of my other videos on this channel helpful for you in relearning things. I recommend you check out some of my other materials to help you get back into playing.